Hello, I'm Evelyn Rusli, and this is TechCrunch Now for Tuesday, July 20th. There were two key profit reports after the closing bell today. Yahoo reports profits of 15 cents a share, just 1 penny above the street's calls. Revenues came in about $1.6 billion. That was a 2% rise thanks to a jump in display advertising. Now, the real star of the day, of course, was Apple with yet another blowout quarter. Profits came in at $3.51 a share, well above expectations. Meanwhile, revenues were at a record all-time high at $15.7 billion. Now, there was strength across the board here. Macs had their best quarter ever with 3.47 million units sold, 8.4 million iPhones sold, and the iPad sold 3.27 million units, almost beating the number of Macs sold the quarter. Here with us now to break down the numbers is our own MG Siegler, who joins us from the very exotic location of his apartment in San Francisco. Now, MG, you just got off the conference call. What are some of the highlights here?
Apple, had a huge quarter, their biggest quarter ever in terms of revenue, which is pretty amazing considering that it's not a holiday quarter, and the biggest Mac sales that they've ever had, which is huge as well.
Many predicted that Mac sales would eventually slow down as iPad gained momentum, but that doesn't seem to be necessarily the case, with Mac just coming off its strongest quarter ever. What do you think will happen to the Mac in the next few quarters?
Yeah, so what's pretty incredible this quarter is that the iPad almost outsold the Mac, and this was, of course, the first quarter that the iPad numbers were released by Apple in their earnings results, and it was very close. It was within a few 100,000 units, so I'm sure that next quarter the iPad will end up passing Mac in sales, but at the same time, as I said, this was the best Mac quarter ever in terms of sales, so it's not like they're really cannibalizing it. And actually, during the Q&A session, Apple COO Tim Cook kind of spun it the other way, saying maybe this will be more like the iPod, a decade ago when it was released, and it kind of triggered a lot of Mac sales. So perhaps the iPad will end up doing the same thing, and both will kind of rise.
Yeah, as you mentioned, this is an amazing quarter for Apple on many metrics, except for one perhaps, and that's margins. In previous earnings reports, that's one of the numbers that I've paid attention to a lot. And this quarter, we saw them slipping from 40.9% to roughly 39.1%. What do you make of margins? Is that something that Apple should be concerned about?
Right. So when Apple gives their guidance, they give their forward-looking guidance, during each quarterly results. Last quarter, they had said that they expect it to go down a little bit. And of course, Apple is, tempering expectations somewhat, and they always do that. But they do have a reason to do that this time. It was because the iPad, and because they're selling it at such a low price, and it costs a little bit, more to make in terms of the price to cost ratio. That was kind of the reason for the lower margins. And Apple also warned that going forward it'll be, kind of the same thing, because the iPhone 4 is more expensive to make than the iPhone 3GS was.
Yeah, and on the topic of the iPhone 4, when they're giving away 3 million or so cases, that's also going to hurt their profit margins. Those accessories are some of the highest profit margin items that they produce, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. They talked about how they're probably going to have to take a little, a hit. It was, I think, 175 million or something that they were going to defer in revenue in terms of giving away those cases to iPhone 4 customers who wanted them. So they are going to take a little bit of a hit there, but that's something they had to do from a PR perspective.
Now, MG, let's look into your crystal ball for the next quarter. So if this was a record quarter, what is the next quarter going to be when you bake in those iPhone 4 sales and the full extent of the iPad sales for the next quarter? I imagine it's going to be another blowout quarter. Apple's predicting roughly $18 billion in revenues, but of course they constantly under-promise, over-deliver. So what do you think is up for them next quarter?
Yeah, so next quarter is going to be really interesting, specifically about this iPhone 4 situation. So, of course, everyone's talking about, will the iPhone 4 antenna affect sales? Tim Cook reiterated today what Steve Jobs said at the press conference on Friday, that so far it's not affecting sales at all, and in fact, returns are less than they have been for the iPhone 3GS. Basically, Cook said that the only thing slowing down iPhone sales at all is the fact that Apple can't make them quick enough. So as long as that continues, Apple's going to have another huge quarter, next quarter. They'll probably sell a record number of iPhones once again. They didn't set a record for iPhone sales this quarter, but part of that, as they explained it, was because during the kind of the end of the quarter, as they were transitioning to the iPhone 4, they started dwindling down the numbers of the iPhone 3GS that was available for sale. And of course, people are naturally going to buy less of the iPhone 3GS as they think a new version is coming out. So yeah, I expect that next quarter. We'll probably see iPhone record sales again. We'll probably see a new record for iPad sales as they surpass Mac sales. Not sure what Mac sales will be like, but yeah, I would bet that overall it's going to be another record quarter for them.
So the bottom line for you is still ongoing high demand, another record quarter for the next quarter. So if you give us a general number where the revenues do you think they're going to be, are around 19 billion, 20 billion?
Something significantly probably into the 20 billions range, which is, pretty incredible. And then, of course, it's the quarter after that, that's the holiday quarter, which is their biggest one, always. So it's going to be pretty impressive this next quarter, though, I think.
So a good year for Apple. Well, thanks so much, MG. Really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
You bet.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.